My name is Allison Barnes, and the moment I realized I was invisible in my own family was the night of my father's 60th birthday party. I stood in the doorway of our dining room, staring at the empty table where 12 people had just finished eating prime rib and chocolate cake, and there wasn't a single plate set aside for me. Not one person had thought to save me anything. Not my mother, not my sister, not even my father, whose party it was. I'd been working a double shift at the diner to help pay for the damn celebration. And when I finally made it home at 9:30, exhausted and starving, my mother looked up from her wine glass and said, "Oh, Allison, we didn't think you'd make it." That's when my grandfather's voice cut through the room like a blade. "Wanna come live with me?" Then everything changed. Have you ever been invisible to the people who are supposed to love you most? Let me back up. I grew up in a house where love was distributed like rations during a famine, and my sister Claire got the lion's share. She was 3 years younger, blonde where I was brunette, charming where I was quiet, and somehow blessed with the kind of effortless charisma that made people lean in when she spoke. I was the responsible one, the one who got good grades without praise, who worked part-time jobs without complaint, who faded into the wallpaper of our middle-class home in suburban Connecticut, while Claire sparkled like a diamond under stage lights. My parents owned a modest accounting firm. Nothing spectacular, but comfortable enough. They'd built it from scratch, and it was supposed to be their legacy. For years, I assumed that legacy would be split between Claire and me. I studied business in community college while working full-time. I helped with their books on weekends. I showed up. But Claire was the favorite, and favorites don't have to earn anything. She went to a private liberal arts college on my parents' dime, majored in communications, and spent most of her time planning her Instagram aesthetic and dating men who drove cars they couldn't afford. My grandfather, Lawrence Barnes, was my father's father and the black sheep success story of our family. He'd made his fortune in commercial real estate in the 80s and 90s, buying up properties in Manhattan when everyone else was running scared. He was worth somewhere north of $40 million, lived in a penthouse in Tribeca, and had the kind of sharp, calculating mind that made other businessmen nervous. My father had always had a complicated relationship with him. Pride mixed with resentment, mixed with the desperate need for approval he'd never quite received. Growing up, I'd see Grandpa Lawrence maybe 3 times a year: Christmas, Thanksgiving, maybe a summer visit if the stars aligned. But something shifted when I turned 23. He started showing up more. He'd take me to lunch in the city, just the two of us, and ask me about my life. Really ask. What did I want? What were my dreams? What was I reading? He was the first person in my family who seemed to actually see me as a human being, rather than supporting cast in Claire's story. The night of my father's birthday party, Grandpa Lawrence had driven up from the city specifically for the celebration. He was 81, still sharp as a tack, still intimidating in his tailored suits and steel gray eyes. When he saw me standing there in the doorway, still in my diner uniform with the smell of fryer grease in my hair, staring at that empty table, something flickered across his face. My mother tried to laugh it off. "Oh, honey, there's some leftover pasta in the fridge from Tuesday." She worked a double shift to help pay for this party, Grandpa Lawrence said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the room. "And no one saved her a plate?" My father shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, it's not a big deal. We just lost track of time." "You lost track of your daughter?" He stood up, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Allison, get your things. You're coming home with me." I thought he meant for the night. Maybe a nice hotel room, breakfast in the morning, a break from the suffocating atmosphere of being overlooked. I didn't realize he meant permanently. I didn't realize that moment would be the last time I'd live under my parents' roof. The penthouse was like stepping into a different universe. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson River. Modern art on the walls. A kitchen with marble countertops that had probably never seen a box of mac and cheese. Grandpa Lawrence set me up in the guest suite, which was bigger than my entire bedroom at home, and told me I could stay as long as I wanted. No conditions. No strings. "Why?" I asked him that first night, sitting in his living room with a cup of tea, still in shock. He looked at me over his reading glasses. Because you remind me of myself at your age. Hungry, invisible, underestimated. He paused. And because I've watched your parents overlook you for 23 years, and I'm tired of it. The next morning, he offered me a job. Nothing glamorous, just administrative work at one of his property management companies. But it came with a real salary, benefits, and something I'd never had before: the opportunity to learn. He started teaching me the business, how to read financial statements, how to negotiate, how to see value where others saw risk. I soaked it up like a sponge, working 10-hour days and studying at night, finally feeling like my brain mattered to someone. My parents called exactly twice in the first month, both times to ask when I was coming home, as if I'd just been on an extended vacation. They didn't apologize, they didn't ask how I was doing. And when I told them I was staying with Grandpa Lawrence, my mother's voice went cold. Well, that's very convenient for you, isn't it? Claire, of course, was furious. She'd always assumed she'd be the one to inherit Grandpa Lawrence's fortune. She was the charming one, the beautiful one, the one everyone loved. She called me crying one night 3 months after I moved in. "You're manipulating him," she said. "You're taking advantage of an old man." "I'm working for him, Claire. I have a job. You have an agenda." Her voice turned vicious. "You were always jealous of me, always bitter that Mom and Dad love me more. And now you're trying to steal my inheritance." I hung up on her. It was the first time in my life I'd ever stood up to my sister, and it felt like stepping off a cliff. For 2 years, I lived with my grandfather and learned everything he could teach me. I discovered I had a gift for real estate, for seeing potential in struggling properties, for understanding market trends. He started giving me more responsibility. By the time I was 25, I was managing a portfolio of commercial properties in Brooklyn worth over $15 million. I was good at it. Really good. And then Grandpa Lawrence got sick. It started with fatigue, then confusion, then a diagnosis that hit like a freight train: early stage Alzheimer's. He was 83, and his mind, that brilliant, calculating mind, was starting to slip. Some days were better than others. Some days he was completely himself. Other days he'd forget where he was or call me by my father's name. My family smelled blood in the water immediately. Suddenly, everyone cared about Grandpa Lawrence. My parents started visiting every week, bringing flowers and concerned expressions. Claire moved back to Connecticut to be closer to family and showed up at the penthouse with homemade cookies and tears in her eyes. They acted like they'd always been devoted, like they hadn't basically ignored him for decades unless they needed something. The campaign was subtle at first. Little comments about how tired I looked, suggestions that I was working Grandpa Lawrence too hard, concerned whispers about whether he was really himself anymore. My mother started implying that I was isolating him, keeping him from family. Claire started posting throwback photos on Instagram with captions about how much she loved and missed her grandpa, carefully curating an image of the devoted granddaughter she'd never actually been. I watched it happening and felt powerless to stop it, because Grandpa Lawrence's mind was failing, and on his bad days, he believed them. On his bad days, he looked at me with confusion and asked who I was. On his bad days, Claire would swoop in with her bright smile and loving hugs, and he'd light up because he remembered her from childhood, from before his brain started betraying him. The breaking point came on a Wednesday afternoon in October. I came home from a site visit to find my parents and Claire sitting in the living room with Grandpa Lawrence and a lawyer I'd never seen before. My grandfather looked confused and tired, his eyes unfocused. "What's going on?" I asked. My father stood up, his expression carefully neutral. "Allison, we need to talk about your grandfather's care. We've been very concerned about his well-being." "His well-being is fine. He has round-the-clock care. The best doctors—" "He has you," my mother interrupted. "A 25-year-old with no medical training, no legal authority, and a clear conflict of interest." The lawyer cleared his throat. Your grandfather has asked me to help him update some of his estate planning documents. Given his diagnosis, it's important to make sure everything is in order. I looked at Grandpa Lawrence. Is this what you want? He looked confused, glancing between my father and me. I I think so. They said it was important. My heart cracked. Can I speak to you alone? That's not necessary, Claire said quickly, moving to sit beside him on the couch. Grandpa and I already discussed this. He wants to make sure everyone is taken care of fairly. Right, Grandpa? He nodded slowly, and I realized with horrifying clarity what was happening. They were taking advantage of his confusion to manipulate him into changing his will, to cut me out, to punish me for being the one he'd chosen. I could have fought them right then, could have caused a scene, called his regular lawyer, demanded medical evaluations. But I looked at my grandfather's tired, confused face, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't turn his last years into a battleground. So I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I let them win. I packed my things that night and moved into a small apartment in Queens. I didn't make a scene. I didn't fight. I simply left, just like I'd always been left behind. My parents seemed almost disappointed by how easily I gave up. Claire posted something on Instagram about family healing and forgiveness. But here's what they didn't know. Grandpa Lawrence had given me something far more valuable than money. He'd given me education, experience, and connections. For 2 years, I'd been learning from one of the sharpest real estate minds in New York. I'd been making contacts, building relationships, and watching how the game was played. And on his good days, during those increasingly rare moments of crystal clarity, he'd made sure I was protected. 3 months before his diagnosis, when he was still completely lucid, Grandpa Lawrence had set up an irrevocable trust. Not for me directly, but for a business venture he wanted to fund. He'd put $5 million into it and made me the sole trustee with complete control. It was his way of ensuring I'd be okay, no matter what happened. He'd made me promise not to tell anyone about it, and I'd kept that promise. They'll come for everything I have, he'd said. Your father, your mother, Claire, they'll pick the bones clean. But this is yours. Build something with it. Make me proud. So that's exactly what I did. I spent the next 6 months working 20-hour days. I used the trust fund as seed money and started buying undervalued properties in emerging neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens. Nothing flashy. Small apartment buildings that needed work, commercial spaces in areas that were about to gentrify. I did the math, ran the numbers, and took calculated risks. I hired good people, contractors I'd met through Grandpa Lawrence's network, property managers who knew their business. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I just worked, quietly building an empire while they fought over my grandfather's estate like vultures. Grandpa Lawrence died on a Tuesday morning in April, with Claire holding his hand and my parents standing at his bedside. I wasn't there. They hadn't called me. I found out 3 hours later from his longtime secretary, who'd always liked me. I cried alone in my apartment, mourning not just the man, but the only person in my family who'd ever really seen me. The will reading was exactly what I expected. My parents got the penthouse and a substantial cash inheritance. Claire got his stock portfolio and his art collection. I got nothing. Not a dollar, not even a mention except for a footnote thanking me for my brief service to the family. Claire couldn't resist calling me. I'm sorry, Allison, she said, not sounding sorry at all. But Grandpa made his wishes clear. He wanted to provide for his whole family, not just reward one person for sucking up to him. I almost laughed. I hope it all brings you happiness, Claire. It will, she said. Mom and Dad are selling the penthouse. I'm getting married next spring, and Grandpa's money is going to pay for everything. You should be happy for me. I am. I lied and hung up. I went back to work. I kept buying properties, kept building. The trust fund grew. My portfolio expanded. I was 26 years old and running a real estate company worth over $12 million, and no one in my family had any idea. The universe has a sense of humor, though, because 18 months after Grandpa Lawrence died, my parents' accounting firm collapsed. It turned out my father had made some spectacularly bad investments, trying to flip commercial properties without understanding the market. He'd borrowed heavily, over-leveraged himself, and when the market shifted, everything came crashing down. They lost the firm, they lost their savings. They had to sell their house. Claire's Instagram perfect marriage lasted 14 months before her husband left her for someone else. The divorce was messy and expensive, and she burned through her inheritance fighting it. The art collection she'd inherited? Turned out most of it was worth far less than Grandpa Lawrence had paid for it. He'd been sentimental about a few pieces, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. I heard about all of this through the grapevine, through mutual acquaintances and distant relatives who loved gossip. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I just kept working. And then, on a cold morning in November, 3 years, after I'd walked out of that penthouse with nothing but a suitcase and my dignity, my mother called me for the first time since the funeral. "Allison." Her voice was small, defeated. "I need your help." I almost hung up. Almost. But curiosity won. "What kind of help?" "Your father and we're losing everything. The house is in foreclosure. We have nowhere to go. I know we haven't been good to you. I know we failed you. But you're still our daughter, and I'm begging, please help us." The old Allison, the invisible one who'd spent 23 years trying to earn crumbs of approval, wanted to say yes immediately, wanted to fix everything and prove I was worthy of love. But I wasn't that person anymore. "Where's Claire?" I asked. A pause. She's struggling too. The divorce took everything. She's living with friends." "And you want me to help all of you?" "If you can." My mother's voice cracked. "I know we don't deserve it, but please." I thought about that night, standing in the doorway, staring at an empty table. I thought about every piano recital Claire got praised for while my straight A's went unnoticed. I thought about them manipulating a sick old man to cut me out of his will. I thought about the years of being invisible. "I'll help you," I said finally. My mother sobbed with relief. "Thank you. Thank you so much. But there are conditions. Anything. You're going to work for me, all three of you." I let that sink in. "I own a property management company. You'll start as administrative assistants, minimum wage. You'll work 40 hours a week, answer phones, file paperwork, clean apartments between tenants when needed. You'll show up on time, work hard, and earn your keep. I'll provide you with a rent-free apartment in one of my buildings in Queens. It's a one-bedroom, so you'll have to figure out sleeping arrangements. After 6 months, if you've proven yourselves reliable, we can discuss raises and better accommodations." Silence on the other end. That's humiliating," my mother finally said. "No," I replied calmly. "Humiliating is being overlooked and undervalued for 23 years. This is called employment. Do you want my help or not?" Another long pause. "When do we start?" They started the following Monday. My father, my mother, and Claire all showing up at 8 a.m. to a small office in Long Island City where I ran my operations. I'd built a team of 12 people, all young, all hungry, all loyal. They knew my story. They'd heard about the family that had thrown me away. Watching my parents answer phones and schedule maintenance calls was surreal. Watching Claire clean apartment units in Queens after tenants moved out, her manicured nails ruined by bleach and scrubbing, was karmic justice in its purest form. They were terrible at it at first, complained constantly, but they learned because they had no other choice. I wasn't cruel. I didn't humiliate them publicly or lord my success over them. I simply treated them exactly how they'd treated me for years, as invisible. I didn't praise them for doing the bare minimum. I didn't reward them for just showing up. I expected them to earn respect through work, same as everyone else. 3 months in, my father asked to speak with me privately. We sat in my office, him looking older than I remembered, and me behind the desk Grandpa Lawrence had given me. "You've done well for yourself," he said quietly. "I had a good teacher. He always liked you better than me, my own father." There was bitterness in his voice, but also something else. Regret, maybe. "He didn't like me better," I said. "He saw me. There's a difference." My father looked down at his hands. "We were terrible to you. Your mother and I. We let Claire's light blind us to everything else, and by the time we realized what we'd done," he trailed off. "I'm sorry, Allison. I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry." It was the first time he'd ever apologized to me, the first time he'd ever acknowledged what they'd done. I waited for the rush of vindication, the satisfaction of hearing those words. Instead, I just felt tired. "I'm not doing this to punish you," I said. "I'm doing this because it's what I know how to do." Grandpa Lawrence taught me to see value in things other people overlook. That includes people. 6 months later, I promoted all three of them. My father became a property manager for one of my buildings. My mother joined the accounting team, using the skills she'd let atrophy for years. Claire, surprisingly, turned out to have a talent for tenant relations. She was charming when she needed to be, and she'd learned empathy through suffering. We're not a happy family. We're probably never going to be. But we're honest now, in a way we never were before. They see me now. Not because I demanded it, but because I built something they couldn't ignore. Last month, I bought a penthouse in Tribeca. Not Grandpa Lawrence's old place, but close. Same neighborhood, same river views. I had his secretary, Margaret, who's retired now, over for dinner. We sat on the balcony with wine and watched the sunset over the Hudson. "He'd be proud of you," she said. "Lawrence always knew you had it in you." "Did he know?" I asked. "About the trust fund, about what I'd do with it?" She smiled. "Oh, honey, Lawrence didn't become a self-made millionaire by accident. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew they'd try to cut you out. He knew you'd land on your feet. And he knew that letting them think they'd won was the only way to give you the freedom to build something truly yours." I thought about that. About how Grandpa Lawrence had seen the whole chessboard while everyone else was just pushing pieces. How he'd given me not just money, but the tools to forge my own path. How he'd understood that the greatest gift isn't protecting someone from hardship, but preparing them to face it. The business is worth $42 million now, more than Grandpa Lawrence's entire estate. I employ 68 people. I provide affordable housing in neighborhoods that desperately need it. I've built something that matters, not because I inherited it or because someone handed it to me, but because I earned it. My family works for me, and that's its own kind of poetry. But here's the thing they'll never understand. I didn't build this empire for revenge. I built it because when everyone else made me invisible, one person saw me and gave me permission to see myself. That's the real inheritance. Not money, not property, but the unshakable knowledge that you are worth taking up space in the world. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't destroying the people who hurt you. It's becoming so authentically, undeniably yourself that their opinion stops mattering altogether. They didn't save me a plate, so I built my own table. And now? Now I get to decide who sits at it. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. But more importantly, when someone shows you who you can become, build on it. Because that's not revenge. That's resurrection. And resurrection always was more powerful than revenge anyway. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.